On the first programme in this new year, the journey to Easter begins in earnest today. We begin the season of Lent as we see Jesus compelled by the Spirit to enter the wilderness. Now, the trials of the desert followed quickly after the exhilarating experience of the baptism of Jesus by John. So let me read then the passage from Matthew 4, 1 through to 11. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Jesus answered, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. "If you are the Son of God," he said, "throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their arms, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." Jesus answered him, "It's also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. "All this I'll give you," he said, "if you will bow down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." Then the devil left him, and angels came to attend him. Now, whenever you see the number 40, you know it's a special number. 40 days corresponds to a period of 40 years when the Israelites knew what it was to wander in the wilderness. For 40 years, if you remember that old map of the Israelite journey on the call of God to go into a promised land, for 40 years they wandered around. But for 40 days, there was this tempting. And three temptations speak powerfully to us today. There are three temptations that we're going to look at. And the importance of Scripture is to be found throughout the passage for the answer of Scripture. Let's consider those three temptations for just a moment. Firstly, stones into bread. Well, of course, you'd expect that. People needed to eat if they were hungry. But it's to fulfill popular conception to some extent, that kind of miracle. If you just do this, the devil says to Jesus, just turn the stones into bread. After all, you've done many other things, probably some things that are even beyond thinking of this. Just do this and everything will be fine. Then secondly, jump from the pinnacle of the temple. Now here's their temptation of a show person. If Jesus will just be a performer, an actor, somebody whom people will stand back and say, gosh, what a performer. But Jesus didn't want to play into that performance mode. He wasn't a show person, and he wasn't going to jump off the temple so everybody would be impressed by him. He was something far more deep and profound than that. And then thirdly, offering the kingdoms of the world. This is the offer of political power. This is really much bigger. And it seems to me that this is where the temptation should get us away from merely personal religion. It's really, Jesus didn't buy into that idea that you can have all the authority and power that you need that the world can give. And in that, there will be something that was real. Jesus didn't want that. Through the way of humility and service, ultimately to death upon the cross. The whole of his ministry in the Gospels is going to be a journey that reminds us of another way. Lent is a season when we think of many things, but I think we think of the temptations. Not many of us will be on the top of a pinnacle and be tempted to throw ourselves off to perform. Not many of us will be turning stones into food. But I think what they represent is something that every one of us, day by day in our lives, can associate with. We can make some kind of linkage with in terms of our own experience, because we recognize that God is wanting to call us away from the performance end of life to much more the faithful end of life. And Jesus' unwillingness to do those things is really part of the way in which Jesus is offering a new way. He offers a new start, a totally new beginning. And what happens in that period of time? What a time, 40 days, 40 nights, and this happens immediately following. Perhaps the body and the life would be open, would be vulnerable to temptation at that particular moment. So we come to the end of this in Matthew, but I notice that in Luke's account of the very same passage, early on again in that gospel, we find there that there is a sense in which the devil goes away just for a while till an opportune moment. We must always be on our guard for the power of temptation.